Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to 2019. Welcome to the live Q&As with me, Professor Michael Scott, for 2019. And we're kicking off nice and early on the 3rd of January. I hope you all had absolutely fantastic Christmases and New Year, and that you're slowly easing your way back into the working world and to 2019, and that it's all started well for you so far. Here we've had a great time over Christmas, lots of nice downtime with my wife and daughter and our little dog Jasper as well, so it's nice, very, as always, wonderful to spend some time with them, and also wonderful to be back with you guys as well. Hello Sally, Happy New Year everyone, welcome back, it's lovely to see you. Thank you also for some of the great comments that have been coming in over the last couple of hours, and since last night when they reshowed my Sicily series on BBC 4 last night at 8 o'clock. Episode 1 was last night, and tonight at 8 o'clock on BBC 4 is episode 2. Hello Shan, hello John, Happy New Year to you all, Happy New Year Susie. So I hope you can tune in to BBC 4 tonight for episode 2 of Sicily, when we take the history of Sicily from the era of the Arab conquests right the way through to the 21st century. So we drop in on the Arabs in Sicily, the Normans in Sicily, the French in Sicily, the British in Sicily, and finally the Italians coming back to Sicily, as well as thinking about Sicily being on the front, at the razor edge, if you like, of the biggest mass migration of people since World War II that's been happening over the last couple of years, up from Libya, from the coast of North Africa through to Sicily, and then through on to mainland Europe. Hello Glees, how are you doing? Lovely to see you. Wow, you're hot. It's hot in Brazil. Is it probably nearly 40 degrees in Brazil about this time of year, if I remember from my time there back in 2010? Wow, I hope that you're not too hot indeed. Linda, hello, Happy New Year to you all, Happy New Year. Well, we've had a question from Nigel Rusk, who saw episode 1 of the Sicily series last night, and has one question. He said, why do they allow people to walk on that amazing Roman floor mosaic? So we were there in Sicily, and we were at the incredible 4th century AD villa that sits there with those gorgeous mosaics, where the owner of the villa was clearly someone who was involved in the procuration of animals and other kinds of interesting entertainments to be sent on up through to Rome and to the Colosseum perhaps. And he'd had a great mosaic made leading up to the sort of basilica area where he would receive his guests, showing all these animals being brought from all four corners of the Roman world, with him sitting at the centre of it like a mini emperor. And then we saw that fabulous mosaic of the Roman women, often called the Roman women in bikinis, seen taking part in a religious festival. And yes, you're absolutely right, Nigel. These are incredibly precious mosaics, and no, people are not allowed to walk on them willy-nilly. We had special permission. We had a special check of our shoes before we went on to make sure they were nice and clean, and we weren't just walking anywhere we pleased. We stood in certain places that were predetermined so that we wouldn't be doing any damage whatsoever to those fantastic pieces. Hello Debbie, hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us. So Nigel, thank you very much for that, absolutely crucial as always. For these amazing tourist locations, it's a constant problem between, on the one hand, wanting to be popular and well known about and being able to share how wonderful these sites are with as many people as possible, but then of course maintaining and preserving and protecting the site as much as is necessary when you have such heavy footfall. And you see that problem nowhere else better than at a place like Pompeii in Italy, with the huge numbers as the second most visited site in Italy after the Colosseum. Huge footfall each year, and the need for constant preservation and protection at the same time as wanting to show off the site to its best is an ongoing, never-ending job. So thank you, Nigel, for your question about the Sicily series. Any more about the Sicily series, do send them in, and we can deal with them live now while we're on air, or we can deal with them next week on the 10th of January after you guys have seen episode 2. So do let me know. We've had questions in over the Christmas holidays as well. Hi, Becky, how are you doing? Happy New Year. We've had questions in. Alison Risley has asked a question. My Christmas present is a trip to Athens to see the Acropolis. You lucky thing. Can you recommend the best tour sites, cafes, restaurants, bars to visit on a weekend away? I've never been before, planning to go Friday to Sunday. Wow. Well, Athens has, as many people will probably agree with me, Athens, the first time you see it can be a bit of a shock. It's not a place you fall in love with in 30 seconds. Happy New Year, Philippa, how are you? I'm glad you guys all love Sicily. Athens as a place to visit for the first time, not necessarily a place you fall in love with in the first 30 seconds. It's quite kind of a loud, kind of completely overwhelming landscape that you find yourself in. And I think you need to plan that trip carefully, you know, in terms of making sure you have the space to just sit back, relax, get yourself into Athens mode, and then you can really enjoy it. So my top tip when you arrive is to head towards the area of Theseo, which is at the base of the Acropolis, and there's a large number of outdoor cafes around there. Even though it's cold, try and sit outdoors if you can, and just you can get a glimpse of the Acropolis and the Parthenon and all the beautiful sights of the centre of Athens. Sit down, grab a coffee, do like the Greeks do, take some time enjoying your coffee so that you can just get into the spirit of the place and engage with it on your own terms. Hello Alexandra, how are you doing? Happy New Year, thanks so much for joining us. Once you're feeling comfortable with the pace of everything, obviously the Acropolis is a must. Spend a good amount of time up there, as is the Agora, but my favourite place in the centre of Athens is the Pnyx, which is the assembly, the ancient democratic assembly place of Athens. Now it is an archaeological site, but it's never got a queue of people trying to get in. Almost you might have the place to yourself if you go at certain times of day. Lots of people like to go there for sunset, see sunset over the whole of Athens, and climbing to those central hills gives you a chance to just observe the mass of modern Athens as it spreads out in every direction around you to the big hills and mountains that surround the city. So definitely the Pnyx, definitely Theseo for coffee, definitely the Acropolis. And then if you've got a chance to get out down to Piraeus and to the port area of Athens, Piraeus is great fun, but go to Munichia, which is the smaller port. It's more the luxury harbour of modern day Athens. You'll see quite a few very nice boats there, but Munichia was one of the older ports of ancient Athens, and today it has a great bunch of fish restaurants where you can sit by the sea and have a great fish lunch, perhaps to recover on a Sunday lunchtime. But if you want some night entertainment in Athens, well, then I would recommend two different areas, either Sicily, which is in the centre of Athens, just very near the Agora and the Monastiraki metro stop. Sicily has lots of great restaurants, bars, and glika, sweet pudding shops, and it's my kind of town, the place, entire shops entirely dedicated to puddings. And also, if you want something a bit more upbeat, go down towards Keramikos and to the area called Gazi, which is actually an old abandoned, I guess, a kind of electricity station area that has been completely revamped into a brilliant place for nightlife. Lots of restaurants, lots of bars, and it's absolutely fabulous and well worth spending some time there. So do it and enjoy. Have a great time, Alison. Let us know how your tour goes and how your trip goes, and I hope that you come back full of love for the city of Athens. Tell us also, people who are there, what are your favourite places in Athens and your favourite things to do while you're there? It'd be lovely to hear from that. Hello Anne, Happy New Year from Sweden. Hello Sweden, lovely to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Please do let us know what's your favourite place in Athens. We got a question also from Messer Nicolau, just seen on Viasat History, the documentary about Italian invisible cities, Italy's invisible cities. And he has a question about the statues and mosaics that we saw under the water at Baia down in the Bay of Naples that we scuba dived down to. Is there a possibility that these statues and mosaics could be taken from the sea and displayed in a museum? Well, I have to admit that the ones that we saw underwater that are there today underwater are not the originals. They have already been replaced with copies that are there under the water, and the originals are already safe and sound on display in the museum. Given that it is now an archaeological park, people are allowed to scuba dive down there. I think they thought it was just a bit too dangerous to leave the originals there, quite rightly. And so they have already been replaced and made safe, never fear. Maria's saying Monastiraki is a wonderful area too. Absolutely, the markets of Monastiraki in Athens during the day, do enjoy, just have a wander, have a good wander, and just soak in the place, the pace and the delights of Athens. Personally, also in the Monastiraki area in Athens, I love the meat and the fish markets. If you've got a strong stomach and you don't mind seeing parts of animals you've never seen before being chopped up and put on display for sale, then the meat and fish markets are brilliant. Georgina from Chicago, welcome. Thank you so much for joining in. It's great to have you with us. We're going on to a bigger, more historical question now from Martin Hislop. The Romans ruled a vast empire, both directly through governors and indirectly through client kings Could you comment on how the civil governance was maintained, notwithstanding the often imperial turmoils in Rome? This is a great question, Martin. Thank you. I mean, how did the Roman Empire manage to stretch itself so wide and keep such a close and clever hand on so many people, when it certainly never had enough soldiers to be everywhere en masse at once? In fact, it really is the Roman kind of imperial model is a brilliant example of light touch governance, much more so in fact than the Athens and the Athenian Empire ever was. Quite ironically, in comparison, you might think the Athenian democracy et al. Would be more light touch, but when you count up the number of bureaucrats, servants and officials that the Athenian Empire sent out to its territories, it was far, far higher than the Roman imperial bureaucracy was, and the people they sent out. So really, Rome managed to cover a much, much wider area with a much more light touch system. How did they do it? Well, Martin alluded to one way of doing it, which was, if they possibly could, once initial conquest had happened and the military machine had rolled over and submission had been won, and the military then presence was vastly diminished and declined to protection of the new borders of the empire, then Rome tried its best, if it possibly could, to work with the local systems of power, the local politics, the local structures and hierarchies, and indeed with the local rulers. And once they'd submitted to Rome and they'd said that their ultimate loyalty was now to Rome, they could continue to rule as client kings. Now this was a brilliant option because it kept the system familiar to the locals, it kept the structures similar, it absolutely minimalised the amount of bureaucracy and people that the Romans themselves had to deal with, and all they asked in return was that official submission, and of course then normally some kind of tax, some kind of financial contribution towards the centre. So if possible, that was the way that they did things. If they had to move in and take over, hello from London, James, hello, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining. If they had to move in a stronger form, they would do so sometimes just for short periods. Sometimes they would take over and officially introduce a Roman governor, a sort of head figure in the area that would be the ultimate authority. But still, if they could, that governor would then rely on local power structures and local elites to keep control as much as possible. Then on top of that, there were the incentives. So the Roman Empire did a brilliant job in offering incentives for good behaviour. A province could enjoy a better legal independence, a more favourable tax bill, if it wasn't causing problems. So at the end of the day, there was a very real benefit, even down to the micro level, to the individuals on the street, for them not causing trouble, because their lives were simply easier and they had a greater degree of autonomy if they did so. So you are free as long as you obey, would be the kind of bumper sticker, if you like, for the Roman Empire from that perspective. The Romans also were brilliant in exploiting local factions within local politics, so they would often play off individual sides within one micro area against one another to divide and conquer in that sense. So again, another tool in the Roman Roman toolkit. And where there were Roman governors sent out to oversee these provinces, how did those systems not get upset by the turmoil that was so often going on at the heart of politics in Rome? Well, that was because actually provinces in the Roman Empire were divided into two different kinds. There were the provinces that the governor, for whom the governor was chosen by the Senate, and there were provinces by whom the representative of the governor was really at the Baia, the discretion of the emperor. So these were the public, if you like, and imperial provinces, and it was weighted very much in the favour of the imperial provinces. Something in the mid-1st century AD, something like 11 public to 25 imperial provinces. So there was a weighted section as to whom the governors of the different provinces of the Roman Empire felt perhaps their ultimate loyalty to. Hi Veronica, you're sneaking a live quick peek of the Q&A whilst at work. Shh, we won't tell anyone. Thank you so much for joining in. So glad that you could join in. And we're also answering a question from Martin Hislop about how did the system of Roman governance work around the empire, and what were all the checks and balances and different tools at their disposal for maintaining control. So we've seen everything from an overall system that tried to ensure the balance of power and the ultimate loyalties of the people who were put in place as the governors of the different Roman provinces, both related back to the Senate, but also related back directly to the emperor. And then there were individual provinces like Egypt, for example, that was so important to Roman trade with the greater ancient world, but also the Roman breadbasket, the provision of grain for Rome, that were thought of and maintained as the property of the emperor. No one was getting their hands on these key provinces. So that was how the balance was maintained and somewhat insulated from the power politics going on at Rome. But then equally, there were lots of checks and balances to ensure it was in the interests of the people in the provinces to behave as much as they could. And of course, there was the ultimate backup authority of the fact that if you did misbehave, you could be pretty sure that at some point fairly soon in the future, those legions would come crashing back in, and they would do what they'd done the first time, conquer you back into submission. Charlotte, you're downloading episode 1 of Sicily. Oh, I'm so glad. I hope you enjoy it when you get a chance to watch, and that it captures what you saw of the place when you were there. Thank you so much for replying. Absolutely. So Martin, thank you very much for that absolutely great question. We're going to take a break from the questions to have a think about what's been in the news, classics in the news over Christmas. Well, some of you may have been following this, and actually, bizarrely, I got a call from the BBC World Service on Christmas Eve to ask if I'd do a quick radio interview for the World Service about the latest discovery from Pompeii, which was the horse skeleton with a saddle and bridle still attached. So there I was doing a quick interview with BBC World Service about that, which is an absolutely extraordinary find that really capped off a year of amazing discoveries coming from Reggio 5. It's the area of Pompeii, of the city of Pompeii, that has yet to have been excavated. And it's kind of crazy, isn't it, that after 250 years or so of excavation, still something like a third of the city has yet to be uncovered. And yet this Reggio 5 has been explored most recently. They're doing a sort of 2-year project, which has been brought about or necessitated by the fact that actually Reggio 5 is quite an unstable area with all that volcanic materials on top of it, lots of water problems, and it's been causing damage to some of the excavated areas of Pompeii. So back to that issue of how do they protect and defend the amazing things that have already been discovered, it now became necessary to investigate, to excavate, and thus to be able to preserve parts of Reggio 5. And as part of that, there's just been this ongoing litany of amazing discoveries, because they're now going at this excavation with the latest cutting-edge technology. So everything from beautiful frescoes have been uncovered to graffiti, as we've been talking about on previous Q&As, that have kind of tilted the balance as to when we think the eruption of Pompeii and of Vesuvius might have been, from the summer through to the autumn, 79 AD. But then also bones, actual, not just filling in the sort of empty figures of deceased individuals with plasters, as they've done in the past at Pompeii, but actually now discovering the skeletons of individuals and then being able to analyse those skeletons. So one skeleton's been found where they've found lesions on the tibia, which suggests a bone infection, which suggests that this person probably couldn't run away very quickly when the eruption came, and seems to have still been in the city after the first fall of pumice stones, and then have been he was killed by the pyroclastic flow that came along afterwards. So down to the level of detail in one of the gardens they've discovered of a small altar, they've even been able to analyse the burnt remains of an offering to the gods that was on this altar before that altar was covered by the eruption of Vesuvius. So they are able to know that people were offering eggs and pine nuts and other sorts of things on this altar, which absolutely blows my mind. And now the latest thing, the horse that has been discovered with its saddle on, its bridle on, and already we're itching, aren't we, to tell that story of kind of, was this a horse saddled up for a rider to jump on and escape, to flee the coming eruption, and neither made it. Kind of a last-ditch attempt to get out of Pompeii, but both the rider, one presumes, and the horse instead suffocated and died. So another remarkable discovery, and one can only hope there are more such discoveries to be uncovered as Regio 5 gets analysed even more. There was a great article as well, and we'll put the link up on the Facebook page, about 2018 being the year of Pompeii for these discoveries, and I think it truly was indeed. So that's a fantastic news that was coming through. We've also had from Peretz, archaeologists may have found 2,500-year-old Persian military base in northern Israel, set up by Persian King Cambyses II after he made making his all-out assault on Egypt. They found the camp in northern Israel from which the Achaemenid emperor launched his invasion of the Nile kingdom. Absolutely crucial moment. Egypt gets absorbed into the Persian Empire, where it will stay until Alexander the Great comes through and conquers and then turns it into part of his empire before he then dies, and it becomes part of its own Ptolemaic empire ruled by the Ptolemies, where it will stay until it's conquered by the Romans and then become that crucial part of the Roman world. Hello Latifa, how are you doing? Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you so much for all your comments about Sicily as well. I'm so glad you're enjoying. And of course, if we're talking about classics in the news, well, Sicily, Wonder of the Mediterranean, episode 1 was on last night, and episode 2 is tonight, 8 p.m, BBC 4. And I talked about we're going to be taking the history of Sicily from the Arab conquest and potentially the invention of pasta. Coming up from the Arab world into Sicily, and then through Sicily into Italy, all the way through to the 21st century, where we have an interview with the current mayor of Palermo, Leoluco Orlando, who is an extraordinary figure, particularly given the nature of Italian politics right now, and particularly how it's turned since we filmed with him in 2016, who really is an increasingly rare beacon in Italian politics for wanting to open Italy's doors to the world. And as he said to us in the interview that you'll see in the episode 2 tonight, welcome. In his words, welcome is the best guarantee of safety. So a very, very live debate that we captured at the end of the programme, thinking about the migrant crisis and the migrant arrivals into particularly Sicily, and the job of the Sicilian Coast Guard, Italian Coast Guard over the last years in rescuing people out of the sea on their way up from Libya, and how that then fits with Italian politics of 2018-2019. Very much ongoing live issue. So I hope you enjoy episode 2 tonight. Please do send your feedback either through the Facebook page or to the email address, or through my website. You can go to www.msfeedback.net, and there's a short 2-3 minute questionnaire to fill in there, where it'd be great to get your thoughts on the programmes if you can. It is also a prize week. I forgot to say this earlier on. So every month what we do, from all the questions that I managed to answer on the live Q&A, we then reflect on those questions, and I pick a winner of what I think was the best and most interesting question that month, and they win a prize. So I've been having a look at the list, and I'm very, very pleased to say that I think Alex Krause gets the prize this month. Their question: how did the early Christians celebrate Christmas in Greece and Rome, and what archaeological evidence do we have for those celebrations? And we thought about this just in the Q&A just before Christmas on the 20th of December, when we realised that actually for the first 3.5 centuries of Christianity, we weren't celebrating Christmas at all. In fact, the idea of celebrating the birth of Christ's birthday, no one really knew when that date should be, and many people looked down on it as a rather pagan thing to do. So it wasn't until the latter half of the 4th century that the date was fixed and decided upon, and it was decided upon to overlap with a pagan ceremony, that of Saturnalia, and Sol, in particularly the celebration of the unconquered sun, Sol Invictus, to make Christianity more amenable and easier to switch over to for those of used to the Roman pagan world. So thank you, Alex Krause, for that question. You win a 2019 Professor Michael Scott 2019 calendar. If we turn over to the photos, these are all photos that I've taken around the world, as many of you would be familiar with by now. This is January, sunrise from the West Bank, when we were there filming for a programme about, indeed, the first centuries of Christianity back in 2011. So Alex, if you can get in touch via email, michaelscottacademic@gmail.com, or through the Facebook page to let us know the address, we'll get that calendar out to you. And please keep your questions coming in. Everyone I answer will go into the prize draw, which we'll be doing at the beginning of February time. So thank you so much for all your questions. Kind of really enjoying the Sicily program. So delighted. Isabel, you can get a special antenna in the EU to receive UK TV. I like it. You can also use a VPN, can't you, to fool BBC iPlayer that you're actually in the UK, so you can catch up on episode 1 on BBC iPlayer. And while you're there on iPlayer, don't forget that my other series, Ancient Invisible Cities, where we looked at the fascinating histories of Istanbul, Cairo and Athens, is also still available on iPlayer. They've kept it on there for a good 6 months, so everyone can enjoy it indeed. So you can have Sicily and you can have a history of Cairo, Athens and Istanbul all at the same time on BBC iPlayer. Another piece in the news that I don't know whether you captured and saw recently, I just put it down on my Twitter feed earlier on today, but the potential uncovering and unveiling and publicising of one of the best kept secrets of Greek and Roman statuary, which is one of the largest private collections of Greek and Roman statuary belonging to the Torlonia family in Italy. Has never gone on public display ever, might now be going on display at some point in 2019. This is an unfolding story that has at the heart of it an excellent sort of family legal tussle that's going on since the death of the senior member of the family, between two different parts of the family who have very different views about whether or not this statue collection should go on public display or not. So we're waiting to see the outcome of the legal battle that's currently making its way through the courts. But if the side who want to have it on display do win, then we can expect to see something like 90 to 100 pieces of this extraordinary collection go on public display in the Capitoline Museums in Rome at some point during 2019. So if you've got a trip to Rome planned, or you're thinking about going to Rome later on in 2019, keep a lookout for that special exhibition that we hope will go through. I've never before seen Torlonia family collection of Greek and Roman sculpture. And then kind of what's on, obviously we've talked about episode 2 of Sicily tonight, and next Thursday I will be up in Lytham St Anne's, where I'm president of the branch of the Classical Association, the Lytham St Anne's Classical Association, and I'll be doing my annual presidential lecture up there about the sanctuary of Delphi. So I'm hugely looking forward to seeing you all up in Lytham St Anne's who can make the lecture. Please do, if you're in the area, get in touch to get your place booked in, and come along and join us for about a 7 p.m. start for the lecture on the 10th of January. Now that is also a Thursday, and so I will be doing my Q&A at 4 o'clock as usual. I'll have travelled up to Lytham in advance of that, and I'm very pleased to announce that for next Thursday, the 10th of January, I will be joined in the Q&A by a special guest, and that is Katrina Kelly, who is the founder of the Lytham St Anne's Classical Association branch. Now, Katrina got in touch with me now 5 years ago. This is the 5th anniversary this year of the branch. She was, at that time, the youngest person to set about organising, creating, setting up a branch of the Classical Association, the youngest person to do so since 1903. As an 18-year-old at that time, and is now finishing up her studies in classics at university, and has done brilliantly well. It's been an absolute joy to work with her and the team that helps organise the Lytham St Anne's Classical Association packed events schedule for the past 5 years. So Katrina, as a classicist, will be joining me on the live Q&A next Thursday, and we'll be joint answering on 1 or 2 questions, and she's also going to be picking one of her own questions from the list of questions you send in to answer for herself. So do tune in next Thursday, 4 o'clock as usual. I'll be up in Lytham St Anne's, and Katrina and I will be joint answering the questions. So thank you so much for tuning in this week. We have got perhaps just a minute or two for a quick extra question. Now, there was one I had here. Where are we? Lara Naylor. Here we go. Lara Naylor. How does Roman bias colour our view of Carthage? Okay, so we've gone for a very Roman-themed Q&A this week. Roman bias colour our view of Carthage. It absolutely does. With a figure like Hannibal, the great Carthaginian leader who took the fight almost to the very gates of Rome, we only hear about Hannibal pretty much through Roman sources, and they set him up to be a leader of huge ability, not least because they want him to be a formidable enemy for Rome, so that the Romans don't look too bad in taking quite so long to defeat him, but also they give him all sorts of weird and wonderful traits and characteristics that we have to be slightly more questioning of. Of Carthage itself as a city, we would desperately love to know more from the Carthaginian sources to be able to compare and contrast with what the Romans think. So we are inevitably biased, I think, because of the Roman tale, the victor's tale that has been survived down to us in history. But if you want to know more, and if you want to know the latest of what we can do to put the Carthaginians back on their own footing, then I would suggest you go and look at the work of one of the most fantastic scholars of the Phoenicians, people who lived and set up the city of Carthage, and that's Josephine Quinn and her book In Search of the Phoenicians. So absolutely that's a must read, Laura, if you want to know more about what we can do to right the wrongs, if you like, of the historical balance of history. Thank you so much for joining in this Q&A. We're already out of time, but I will see you next Thursday, 10th of January. We'll be up in Lytham St Anne's. Katrina and I will be welcoming you to the Q&A, and we've got lots of questions. If I didn't get to your questions this week, we will do so, I hope, next week. So have a wonderful week ahead. I hope that 2019 starts well for you, and we will see you next week. Take care of yourselves. Bye.